I'm Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to a special edition of Southwest Magazine in Fredericton. Today we will be sitting down with Premier Susan Holt for a look back at her historic win in this year's provincial election and a look ahead at what's to come in 2025. Thank you, Premier Holt, for having us in your office today. I appreciate it so much.
Well, welcome. I'm thrilled to have you.
Tell us a little bit about your landslide win. A lot of people didn't anticipate the scale to which you really dominated. Was it something that you were yourself anticipating?
I mean, I think we were also a little surprised by how many New Brunswickers came out and said really clearly, we want change and we want your team. But we had been confident, right? We had been feeling it on the ground. Door to door, in community, people were telling us that they wanted change and they thought our candidates were really great people, that they were prepared to maybe vote in ways they'd never voted before to elect our team and to get the change that they were looking for.
What do you think resonated most with voters? How big a role do you think Policy 713 played in the outcome of the election?
I actually don't think Policy 713 played that big of a role because voters told us they wanted a government focused on healthcare. They were frustrated that they had a government that had been distracted by what they saw as a really sort of niche specific issue, a negative one that people felt like it wasn't positive what was happening there, and they wanted their government to be focused on delivering them a healthcare system that was strong, recognizing the affordability challenges people were facing, tackling the housing crisis with urgency, and there's other things people wanted our government doing in education rather than Policy 713, right? They wanted to see teachers supported. They wanted to see teachers in classrooms. They wanted their school buses to show up. And so I don't think it played a significant role, but I think people responded to us because we had been listening for a long time. I had been touring the province for more than a year on the ground, listening to people, and we knew that what their number one priority was healthcare, and that's what we campaigned on.
This is usually the time of year we do a year in review, but we are day 30-something of your time in office. Yeah. But you did make a lot of commitments to your first 100 days. You've checked a lot of boxes so far. Walk us through what you've been able to accomplish already.
Yeah, we're really proud to have hit the ground running. I've said before, I'm not a patient woman, so we had things we wanted to get accomplished before this year was out, like amending 8420 to make sure that people have access to abortions funded through the healthcare system, like putting the rent cap in place. That's going to pass in legislation this week. Taking the tax off of new multi-unit developments, that 15% savings, that was effective November 15th, so builders can get out and get those projects moving. Nurses retention. We really wanted to show that we valued nurses, and we've put those retention bonuses in place that'll be going into people's bank accounts this month. The 10% off of your electricity bills, that'll come into effect January 1. So lots of things that we've been able to get done in just 37 days.
When you talk about the nurse retention, the $10,000 grants, tell us a little bit about how you'll measure the success of that program.
Yeah, we're looking at the retention rate of nurses. One of the big concerns was how many nurses were leaving the profession either for other jobs or to get out of nursing altogether. And we were seeing really high rates of departure, even with younger nurses. And so we're hoping that this, and the data suggests that this $10,000 bonus will keep people in their jobs for the next couple years while we change the fundamental working conditions that will hopefully keep them in those jobs for the long term.
Another with healthcare is the collaborative care clinics that are going across New Brunswick. The first 10 in 2025. One will be in St. Stephen, so Charlotte County is quite excited. How do you expect these clinics to alleviate stresses on the healthcare system, but also make these clinics financially feasible?
Yeah, two ways. People get better care when it's close to home and when it's up front, right? It's that preventative primary care. Nobody wants to have to go to the hospital, but that's where they're going because they don't have a family doctor and they don't have access to a clinic, which means our hospitals are getting full of people in waiting rooms, in ERs, and that's more expensive healthcare. That's a great place to get sick. So we're looking forward to putting those collaborative clinics in place where healthcare professionals will now be supported by a team. For a long time, a family doctor has been doing the job alone. The paperwork burden has been piling up, and so these clinics will come with administrative support so that the healthcare professionals that we do have in New Brunswick can spend more time on patients and less time on paperwork, and they can be spending that time with patients up front and in their community and not in emergency rooms. So it'll help us deliver better care and less expensive care for New Brunswickers.
What's the timeline on the first 10 and then going after that to the first 30?
Well, we want to move those 10 really quickly in the next 12 months, and we have some of them that are slated to open up really soon. The one in Fredericton is on the verge of being open. I think in St. Stephen, we're looking at location. Does it fit in the hospital? There's sort of room for a clinic there, I think, on the 3rd floor, or do the primary care professionals in that community want to be together somewhere else, right? The beauty of this model is that it's led by the people doing it. So we're not going to come in and tell the healthcare professionals of St. Stephen where they have to be. They're going to tell us where they want to practice and who they want to practice with and how we can make that really attractive for them to stay and deliver care. Because St. Stephen in particular has seen too many family doctors go in the last 12 months alone. I think they've lost 4 or 5. And so we have to create the model that's going to attract new family doctors and nurse practitioners and other caregivers into the thing that they will have designed themselves. So working out the details of where that's going to be and who's going to be in it, we're going to do as quickly as we can so that in 2025, folks in that region will be able to go in to a collaborative clinic and get care when they need it.
When you look at the education system, I know looking at free breakfast for all, as well as pay what you can lunch is a big part of your platform. How do you see this rolling out?
Yeah, that's one that's a little similar to the collaborative care model in that it's going to be different in different communities because we want to respect that in certain places, it's a parent committee that's doing it. In another place, it's being led by a not-for-profit organization. There's donations coming in from local food providers. So the provincial government's role is to coordinate and to make sure it's equitable. We want to make sure that every program has what they need, whether that's funding, food, volunteers, support. Maybe they need a fridge, and so different places will have different needs. And we're going to put in place that coordinating function with the funds to make sure that we can confirm that every school in New Brunswick has a universal breakfast program in place with healthy foods and local foods. And then we're going to roll out the pay what you can lunch model. That'll probably be supported by a bit of a shared back end of how you can invisibly determine sort of who pays what when so that the students all experience the same thing. And we're make sure that that's in place with different partners. In some places it's a food bank or it's a different organization. And so we want to work with them, work with the people that already are on the ground and know their communities best. And we'll make sure that it's coordinated, that it's efficient, and that everybody has what they need.
I know in Charlotte County we've seen the use of food banks go up quite a bit, especially in the last year. Is there a fear with that? Obviously that makes the need more critical for these universal programs for free breakfast, but does that make you concerned about the price tag that would come along with it if we're seeing across the board that food bank use is up?
Yeah, we've seen certainly that the projections for usage of a school food program are starting to grow, right? We had modeled off of PEI in a couple places in the States, the typical uptake that you see of a program like that, and we're starting to see those numbers grow in those places that we used for our model, and we see it in New Brunswick. More and more people are using the food bank, and food banks are finding it harder and harder to meet the needs of their communities with the rising cost of food. So we're hoping that this program takes some of that pressure off of food banks so that they can use those same resources to meet different needs, because we'll be meeting the needs of families that have kids in school. So we're going to be watching really closely the uptake, and we're going to be leaning on our federal government partners and hopefully signing a deal really soon for their contribution into the program to make sure that we can serve everybody.
Housing is obviously a big factor when it comes to cost of living. Your team has promised 30,000 new units by 2030. Can you talk a little bit about what the plan is for that, and again, how you see it rolling out?
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that one, because right around now people are starting to wonder what their property tax bill is going to be, and getting nervous about it because it's a big expense that has people considering whether they need to sell their home, move, and if they're looking to move, can they find an apartment that they can afford? We really need to get more housing stock built. That's one of the reasons why we push to adopt the HST discount, taking 15% off of the costs of new multi-unit developments. And that's in effect November 15th, which means that projects can go and get more units built in New Brunswick to help us meet that 30,000 goal. We're also doing a community housing retention and expansion program to work with nonprofits and community organizations that are providing the kind of affordable and supportive housing that we really need in communities. We've put the rent cap in place to provide some stability to renters that have been experiencing 10, 11% rent increases that are really, really hard to afford. So those are a few of the things. And then we're doing a total property tax overhaul. So we want to make sure our property tax system is competitive, that it doesn't penalize people for whether they choose to rent or whether they own. And so we believe that our property tax transformations will also help spur more homes being built in New Brunswick.
And talk to us a little bit about the rent cap at 3%. That goes into effect February 1st,
That's
so
right.
very soon.
Yeah.
How do you respond to critics that say that might disadvantage developers from wanting to go ahead with a new project?
Well, I'd point them to the data, right? Rent caps exist in Ontario. They have in Ontario for a long time, and even at a rate lower than ours. They're in place in Quebec, in PEI, in Nova Scotia, and those jurisdictions are seeing more housing starts than we are here in New Brunswick. So the evidence doesn't suggest that a rent cap is a dampener to development. When we talk to developers, they tell us taxes, like the HST, property taxes, those are their disincentives to decide whether to move forward with a project. No developer really wants to raise the rates on their tenants a lot too frequently. They want to build places that people can afford and that they will have stability, but they're looking at the cost to build. That's why we've put in place the 15% off of the cost of building. That's why we're overhauling the property tax system, so that it's a balance, right? We need a balance for tenants and we need a balance for landlords. And so we think the combination of a rent cap, tax off of development, and reformed property taxes will create the right environment to see us start to beat our neighboring provinces in housing starts and have enough supply that we can have a market where the prices are a bit more stable.
Mm-hmm. When your critics would say that there are a lot of expensive promises, how will you pay for this? How will you balance the budget year after year?
Yeah, it's interesting how quickly people forget that ours was the least expensive platform, actually, and that the other two parties were promising much more expensive commitments than ours. But at the end of the day, the surpluses that we've seen in years past are not likely to continue, right? We inherited this, I think we got a $92 million deficit was the projection so pretty much as soon as we hit office, that was the Q2 update. And so we can't just deliver all of our commitments and not find ways to save money and find ways to drive revenues, right? We want to see economic growth in New Brunswick. You know, it feels like our foot's been on the brake for the last number of years. There's some really exciting opportunities to grow our economy at the port and then all of the networks that connect to what the port is bringing in. We see opportunities in energy and cybersecurity and health research and home care. There's lots of ways that we're going to grow the economy and hopefully keep the top line of the province healthy, but we're also getting out of court, getting out of lawsuits that have been costing us tons of money. There's opportunities to save in how we deliver government, and we're going to be finding all of those so that we can deliver the balanced budget commitment that we made to New Brunswickers.
You were a senior economic development advisor to the government in the past. How does that inform where you're looking for economic growth going forward? And are you concerned about the tariffs that Trump is promising in the new year?
I'm extremely concerned about the tariffs that Trump is promising. Those will be really damaging to the New Brunswick economy if they come into effect at the rate that Trump is suggesting at 25%. So we are doing everything we can in collaboration with premiers from around the province to make our case and to build the strategy that will hopefully result in Trump not putting those tariffs in place. They really will be very damaging to a number of sectors and to our economy as a whole. My experience in economic development with government, I think, has helped me realize that economic development happens in community, right? And at the provincial level, we can't push something on a community, right? You have to have your ear to the ground and see where entrepreneurs see opportunity and where they want to grow and figure out how to get behind them with the kind of supports that those people need, because the government can pull certain levers, right? We used to talk about it as people, ideas, money, infrastructure, and the regulatory environment, right? Those are the 5 things that government can influence that go into whether we grow our economy. And what I learned in those times about the opportunities that are in every corner of this province, I still take with me, and I'm constantly reminded that there are entrepreneurial people in every corner of New Brunswick. We have world-class businesses in every corner of this province, and our government should be listening and watching for those things close to the ground and not trying to put a one-size-fits-all blanket program in place, because we're going to see growth in different ways in different places, and we need a government that's going to respond and support that. And
what are you seeing right now when you look at New Brunswick? Are there industries that are fledgling industries that we could really rein in and make something of?
Yeah, well, there's really exciting things happening, as I mentioned, at the port. The renewal that we've seen at the Port of St. John, the growth in terms of jobs, good paying jobs, and the opportunity that presents when we have all of these goods coming into New Brunswick that we could be adding value to, that we could be working with in order to then send somewhere else, presents an opportunity that we really need to dig into and maximize. We're seeing exciting things happening in our creative sector. We've got some great film producers, art producers that are out there being competitive, attracting productions, streaming productions to New Brunswick, in part because everyone else is tapped out. Right? You go to Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, they're tapped out of talent, but we are an untapped market full of talented people that are ready to drive some of the biggest and most ambitious projects we've seen, and so that's pretty exciting. And then on the healthcare side, there's some great research happening in sensors and long-term care, and ways that we can better help people stay home and keep them healthier longer, so that they can live in community. And I'm excited about some of the work, the solutions that are being developed, the research that's being done that makes sense here, but is going to be interesting to everybody around the world. As everyone is aging, we just happen to be at the front end of it in New Brunswick.
I'm going to pivot very ungracefully and ask you about crime in New Brunswick and what your plans are with your government to combat what we do see in rural areas, especially as a rise in crime.
Yeah, this one has really come up over the last number of years as people's sense of safety is really diminished, right? People feel less safe in their communities, less safe in their homes, and for good reason, because we've seen a rise in crime in New Brunswick, and we haven't been able to keep up with that criminal activity. It's been hard to recruit police officers in RCMP and to get the feet on the ground that we need to try to tackle all that increased criminal activity. And so we have been talking with the communities because, like to your point, it looks different in a rural area than it does in an urban area where there is a police force. Rural areas are often covered by the RCMP that have huge jurisdictions, which means you feel like you never see them because they're passing through once in a while. We have to look at some of the solutions that are working, where we've been able to deploy people on the ground, maybe not as full officers, but in community safety capacities. We're seeing, again, the value of technology, the impact that things like cameras have, and when you link those up, things like the scan network solutions that have been having a positive impact in the communities they've been deployed. We've got to try a whole bunch of different things, because there's no one, it's not just more RCMP officers that's going to fix this. It's communities coming together, communicating with each other, keeping their eyes on it, and a provincial government that's prepared to support and fund and make sure that those public safety investments have a backer in the provincial government.
And I wouldn't be a good Charlotte County resident if I didn't ask if the possibility of a return of a Charlotte County courthouse could be a potential solution or part of the solution.
Yeah, this is something that we're looking at, is trying to assess the time that people are spending in transit, what that means in terms of taking people out of the field versus keeping that police presence in community, and what that data tells us, right? How often is this happening? What's the cost of having, a courthouse that's away versus a courthouse that's in community? We've heard it not just from Charlotte County, but a number of communities that have lost courthouses over the years. So it's something we're looking at to try to figure out, can we get a good affordable service that's going to help make a community safer.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to homelessness and addiction, again, it's something, I know it's a universal issue, but it's something we're seeing A lot of, especially small communities where these weren't as visible even 5 years ago. I know that you've said that your government wants to provide a bed for anyone who wants help. Can you tell us a little bit about what your plan is on those two fronts? I know they are intersecting, but not necessarily the same.
Yeah, they are intersecting, and gosh, I mean, we've seen it in your corner of the province really dramatically in the last 2 years. And it does need a couple different types of solutions. So the big picture is to make sure that we have the kind of residential treatment facilities that people suffering with mental health and addiction can go and really get support and help to tackle those issues and to find a path to a stable and independent life. And we've committed not only to the 50 beds that were put in place, but to putting the community supports in place so that there's mental health outreach available on the ground, that there's school psychologists in school to prevent people from getting to that point where they find themselves on the street and without any other options. So that's the front end, right? You want to get preventative in schools and in community. We have to build up that pipeline of talent, right? We're going to fund residencies for clinical psychiatry and clinical psychology because we need more people with these skills in the system. We're going to put a mental health court in place because right now there's people that end up going through the justice system, but that's not the place for them, and the judges aren't able to fine them for having a mental health issue or to remand them for an addiction problem. And so we need to have a mental health court that can direct them then to these kinds of residential treatment facilities. We need to make sure that the people who are living rough, that we have some temporary solutions in place with them. I mean, we saw the challenges of putting out of the cold shelters in place last year, but we need an environment where we can connect with people and figure out how do we find the kind of housing that they can afford? How do we build that kind of nonprofit, cooperative, supportive housing and community? And there are great partners all over the province that are trying to do these sorts of things and haven't had a provincial government that's ready to partner with them, because we were too focused on just the private sector and getting more homes built that were $1,800 a month. That's not going to do it, right? We need below market supported housing in partnership with our not-for-profits and with our cooperatives. And so that's something that our team is looking to really move more quickly with.
As we look ahead to 2025, what do you hope to accomplish in first year in office?
Oh, well, I mean, the focus is healthcare. We talked about those 10 collaborative clinics. I want them all up, open and running, and we want to see them taking patients off of the waiting list, because our goal is to get that waiting list down, to make sure that every New Brunswicker has access to primary care. So, and we want to learn from that process so that we can get the next 10 open even faster, and we can get to a point where no matter where you are, you know that you're close to a place that can take care of you and your family. That's going to occupy a lot of my energy in 2025. The other one I'd love to talk about is the education system. Big picture, you know, the best way that we could set New Brunswick up for the long term is with a fantastic education system that produces folks that have all the tools they need to live to their full potential. And so we really need to support the teachers that are in our classrooms, make sure that they stay and try to attract people back to the classroom, which means changing how the classroom looks and having new schools that have the kind of spaces that you need to give every kid the kind of education that they deserve. Sometimes that's in the classroom, sometimes that's one-on-one with the right team of professionals. I mentioned school psychologists, guidance counselors, as well as their teachers and EAs and social workers. So we need to make sure that we have the qualified folks in schools to serve every kid, and then we need to put that plan in place for education that's going to take us into the future.
We're sitting here in your office. Our friends on Grand Manan will be happy to know that your painting of Swallowtail is in here as well. How has your life changed in the last couple months?
Oh, I mean, it's been wild. I was in campaign mode for 2.5 years, right? Traveling the province, learning from New Brunswickers, building a team of amazing people that wanted to serve, and to be given the opportunity to serve is really humbling. It's an honor, and it's been a privilege, and it's been an amazing 37 days. Like, even since October 21st, the response that we've been getting, what we've been hearing from New Brunswickers about the sense of relief and hope that they've felt, is really humbling and touching. Like the notes and messages that I've gotten have just, I don't even know how to express it. It's been such an honor to have this opportunity to serve as New Brunswick's 35th Premier, and to now get to go back out into community and say thank you. I can't wait till I get to go to Grandma Nan. I should probably send a picture of that painting to Bonnie and the team there, and to say thank you to everybody who've given us this chance, and to make sure that we continue to keep our ears to the ground, our feet on the ground in community, making sure that as New Brunswickers' needs and priorities shift, that we're right there with them.
People sometimes discredit New Brunswick by saying that when we're ready for change, we just change. But do you think that this means more than that? There's letters from everyone from New Brunswick residents here to Hillary Clinton congratulating you on your historic win. What do you think this win really truly means?
Yeah, I mean, getting a note from Hillary Clinton was wild, right? And that does remind you that while we might be a little New Brunswick, you know, this small, amazing province in Canada, people notice shifts in leadership and values in places, well, as far away as New York or whatever world she lives in. But I think it's about style, right? I think one of the things that New Brunswickers voted for was that we were going to do things differently. It was the how. It was governing with empathy, with vulnerability, with love, with a lot of transparency. One of the things I've been hearing from New Brunswickers, we do these little Monday morning videos where I say, here's what I got on during the week, right? I'm going to do this meeting and that meeting. I'm going to go to this place. We're going to do that thing. And people have said, like, wow, I never understood what happened in government or what the Premier's day would be like. And here you are putting it out there. And they're responding to that transparency because they haven't trusted government before. And they want to, but they need us to change our behavior and communicate and open it up so the folks can really understand what's going on and then participate in it. So I think that that's been the response, is people have wanted a different kind of politics, a different kind of leadership, and we're trying to deliver that.
Well, I appreciate you opening up your office to us and inviting us in before the holidays, and I wish you and your family a Merry Christmas.
Oh, the same to you, Vicki. I love connecting with CHCO and your amazing audience, so thank you for making the time to come and see me.
Southwest Magazine is a news and public affairs production of CHCO Television.